These little CCD sensor cameras have really increased in popularity lately, but it's really been for just photographers. And I wanted to see if I could take this little tiny camera and make something cinematic with it.
Did you say video?
I did say video.
This thing is a camcorder too?
Well, not quite, but almost.
So why do people really gravitate to these old cameras, especially these point and shoot ones? Is because the CCD sensor has a sort of good representation of film. Just a brief story on this particular camera that I got.
We're here to talk about the hottest camera on the street. It is the Canon PowerShot SD450 Digital ELPH.
Fun fact about it, on the strap, this little thing here is actually a multi-use tool. It was meant to push in the SD card and also to pop open all the little doors and stuff on this camera. Pretty cool feature. The other thing with this camera is that it shoots at 59 frames per second. Yes, you heard me right. You can do 60 FPS in this thing, so you can get some cinematic slow-mo. At least that's what I'm hoping for. I will say this camera took a while to actually get up and running. For one, I picked it up at an antique store of all places for $20. The battery was dead, so hopped on Amazon. Battery, charger, 15 bucks. Tried on my SD card, and let me tell you, it will not take 128 gigs. 2 gigabytes, max.
This particular model ships with a 16 megabyte SD card from Buy.com.
And honestly, 2 gigabyte cards are really hard to come by. I just got these random brand ones from Amazon, and I'm so glad I bought 2, which was about $15, because one doesn't work, and that's why it's still in the package. And if you do want to get one of these cameras, make sure it is just a straight SD card. Nothing fancy, just SD, 2 gigs max. That's what'll work. I won't really talk about the photo capabilities of this camera since I'm looking at it from a cinematic perspective.
Voila, cinema.
But the photos are great and honestly a lot better than I expected, considering this camera is almost 20 years old. So what do you actually get function-wise with this? For one, you have a flash, doesn't work with video, just putting that out there. You do have a viewfinder. I don't know, can you see me? Can you see me in there? Which does come in handy, and it does have some crosshairs in it, but it is not an electronic viewfinder. It's literally just a little window to look through. And the other great thing is there is a tripod mount on here. So yes, you can throw this thing on a gimbal if you want and get some smooth shots. Now this next feature is going to surprise you like it did me. And that is that it has this AV out little area, obviously audio video. I didn't have the cable, but I thought that jack looked familiar, and I actually have one. So it's just like that old school yellow and white, yellow for video, white for audio. And then it goes into what looks like a headphone jack. And this thing, you just plug it right in into the camera, take this end, put it into your TV, and you get a live feed of this camera. So theoretically, I honestly, I haven't tried this because I already invested so much into this little thing. Theoretically, you could get an adapter. Like I have this little adapter where you could put it into a USB and put it on your computer. Like you could stream if you wanted with this thing. But if you get an adapter that would take this and output it to HDMI, you technically could put it onto an HDMI monitor and have a bigger view of the camera to do even more professional looking work with it, I guess. But there is no cold shoe or hot shoe mount on this thing, so you would really have to rig it out. Here's a few stats with this thing. You can shoot 30 FPS and 15 frames per second. Very strange, I guess, if you want to get that old choppy look. You can shoot that at both 640 by 480, or if you want to save a bit of memory on your 2 gigabyte SD card, you can go at 320 by 240, which unfortunately is the max resolution that you can actually shoot 60 FPS at. And honestly, the only resolution that's offered for 60 frames per second, which is in a sports mode, so you have to go and access the sports mode just to get to that. There is the ability to change the ISO on this camera. However, it's not really what you would think with an actual ISO number. It's more like an exposure adjustment, so you can go to the left or the right to under or overexpose. So you can have that ability, and I will admit, it is very, very noisy indoors. Like, if you're in low light, this thing, you're gonna have noise, and it's gonna be dancing a lot. Another thing I noticed on this camera, unfortunately, is a couple of dead pixels that just glow bright blue. I don't know if that's a CCD sensor thing or what, but a little bit of a bummer. However, have no fear, because talking about color, this thing has color profiles. Oh my god. There are so many to choose from in this thing, and a couple of them I've never even seen in other cameras. For one, you have color switcher, so you can choose one color, then choose another color, and it will swap the colors in real time on this camera. You can also do the same if you want to just isolate a color where everything's black and white except that color. You can do that right from the camera. And there's a couple other ones you can make your own, which kind of reminds me of like the Fujifilm recipes to make your own look. And there are a couple presets in here, lighter skin, dark skin, vivid, all that kind of stuff. But that's in like one shooting mode. If you go to the regular shooting mode, you get a different assortment of different types of profiles. The one that I tended to go with a lot more was the lower sharpening, because if you're someone that's had like action cameras like this little guy, you know that you need to turn down the sharpening in this to look a lot more filmic and less digital. So a lot of the shots I actually ended up having that lower sharpening feature on, at least the ones that were shot at 30 FPS. Just as you might have expected with it being just a little point and shoot, you can zoom on this thing. The zoom capabilities on this kind of suck. You have 3 times optical, 4 times digital. It's just all going in on that little 5 megapixel sensor, and it's not good. But at least you do get a little bit of reach with this thing. However, you cannot zoom while it's recording. It's just mind-boggling. I guess in 2005, it's like pick and choose. Then again, we're talking about Canon, who is notorious for saying, get all these amazing features, don't get these amazing features. Like every camera they come out with has been like that. So you do have to predetermine your focal length of what you want to shoot at before you actually hit record. What's crazy is that in the regular shooting mode, you can still zoom in, but only on the digital end. So if you're already zoomed in and you want to zoom in more, you can do that while recording, but only digitally. But if you go to like the sports mode with 60 FPS, you can do that. So there's a couple limitations with that. And if you were wondering, it is a minimum aperture of f2.8 and a maximum aperture of f4.9. Doesn't sound bad, but because the sensor is so dang small and it's so low megapixels, you gotta go outside or punch a bunch of light into your scene to make some pretty good usable footage. Oddly enough, one of the features I thought was kind of ironic is that it shoots in 4:3 aspect ratio. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, a lot of the newer cameras, like the one I'm shooting on right now, the Fujifilm X-S20, it shoots an open gate, which is the entire sensor. So a lot of cameras, they're cropped in and not giving you all the extra room. People want a 4:3 aspect ratio so they can crop horizontally and vertically and not really lose a lot of their image. If you want to make some reels and long form content, you might want to pick up one of these things.
I think it's done. Let's see how it turns out.
So that's pretty much everything I got in camera with a little bit of editing and some work done on it. Obviously sound design. I was surprised, but also not surprised with a lot of the shots and how they turned out. I hope you can tell that this thing can really compete with an Arri Alexa. And if you are picking up or you have played around with one of these CCD cameras and made some good looking videos, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see them. And check out this video popping up right here that the algorithm thinks you'd like to watch next. Until next time, I'm Hayden, auf Wiedersehen.